Okay, folks, Andrew Bolpros here. Well, I did a video on our live yesterday. We talked a little bit about Jalen Ramsey. He is in the news, and he's probably the biggest name to potentially get moved prior to camp. A lot to discuss. Some pretty information from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN. I want to kind of recap everything I've heard about him, what his thoughts are, where he could get moved to, and are the Chargers actually an actual location he could end up before this season starts? Plenty to get down into this conversation. So, as always, let's get into it. Okay, folks, as always, like and subscribe if you do enjoy the content. I'm Andrew Bolpros. So, lots to discuss with Jalen Ramsey. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with him specifically. Now, again, we all know Derwin James is a big fan of him. He would love to play with him at some point. Just not sure this is the right time to go out and get him. His contract value is a lot to take in. There's a lot more behind the scenes that I have just recently learned as well that I want to talk about in this video. But let's just go to Jeremy Fowler, see what he says about him getting moved. Jeremy Fowler says, and I quote, "This is the next domino to drop in the league. When you talk about other teams, it's the next big move and anticipated around the NFL. Dolphins are optimistic that they can work out a deal with Ramsey." Now, I'm going to talk a little more about the specifics on that a little later on, but nothing hard and fast developing imminent at the moment or right now. But they've talked to multiple teams in recent weeks and in months. The Rams are believed to still be sort of in the mix here. Again, played for the Rams, won a Super Bowl. At least the teams, other teams have identified as a perfect fit. Mostly, he says he wants to be West Coast. So it's the Niners, Raiders potentially. Interesting kind of conversation. We'll talk a little more about that as well. They have a need, familiar with the player. They won a Super Bowl with him, as we mentioned. But the hang-up is still that the money is going to be his contract. It's $27+ million guaranteed. Woo! That's a lot of money. It's a lot of cheddar, right? And a lot of teams don't have that left over, especially after the draft and, their free agent signings, etc. Teams have a hard time reconciling how much they're going to have and pay on that contract. Now, there's some things to be discussed about that, right? Jalen Ramsey, I think, is a great cover man corner. He's a true lockdown corner, right? We all know that's what he's good at. And a lot of teams don't play man. The Chargers don't play man. We talked about this quite a bit yesterday. Chargers don't play man that much, but Jesse Minter has also said if we had a cover corner, we'd probably play a little more man. They play a lot of zone. Chargers play more zone than any other team in the NFL on defense. Now, you have someone like Jalen Ramsey, you would immediately change your game plan because he is that good. We all know he's that good. Derwin James knows he's that good. Derwin James always wanted to play with Jalen Ramsey, his buddy, all the above. So I think there's a lot to be said about that moving forward. But let's continue on. I do think that there's a few other things we need to discuss. And why is this happening now? Now, I'm going to argue one thing right now. I think the Dolphins are in a rebuilding phase. I truly believe they don't know how much they have left with Tua, right? His concussion issues. Again, the best ability is availability, and unfortunately, he's not been available, and he's had some, obviously some concussions. It's affected his ability to be on the field. That's a problem. You know that. I know that. Tua knows that. Everyone in the league knows that. The problem is that it's an issue. So let's just talk a little more about that. There's a few more things that I want to discuss on this, and we'll wrap up the video. But Dolphins general manager Chris Greer confirmed they are attempting to trade back in April. So that, again, I did a video 2 months ago talking about him, and again, I would have assumed he would have been moved sooner than this, but I think they've been trying to work a deal in the background. Apparently, it's irreconcilable differences, and I'll talk more about that. Ramsey hasn't attended any activities for the Dolphins, including mandatory minicamp. Head coach Mike McDaniel said Ramsey was not fined since this absence was excused. Now, what I've learned recently is that Mike McDaniel and also Jalen Ramsey are not seeing eye to eye on a lot of things, a lot of topics. Ramsey's a bit of a diva. You know that. We all know that. But Mike McDaniel's a bit of a diva too, right? He's kind of his way or the highway. He's an offensive genius, but he's also the head coach. So it's clear that relationship has fractured. Now, the interesting thing is, I'll say this. I'm going to wrap up this little article that I'm reading. It's unclear the reasons to why contract and salary cap. They currently have 21.9 in cap space available. Again, they have money. The Rams have money available to go scoop him up. So it'll be interesting to see if the Rams do go get him. I assume they might. Where this is an interesting conversation is from the Dolphins' perspective. They went out and gave him a huge contract with the assumption that he was going to play out his contract and, of course, be the Jalen Ramsey Bowl. Now, the argument is that he did not play great at the end of last season. Now, you could argue also the season was over. Why would he play hard? It doesn't matter. Let's not get hurt and hurt my chances to be somewhere else, right? We have all heard Tyreek Hill wants to leave. By the way, Tyreek Hill is begging that Jalen Ramsey doesn't leave also. So it's really an interesting conversation. I think if Jalen Ramsey leaves, I think Tyreek Hill will probably just not play anymore and he'll ask to be traded. Interesting times right now to be a Dolphins fan at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Now, apparently, again, my question, and I've always had this question, and this is the question we brought up quite a bit yesterday on our live, is Jalen Ramsey a Harbaugh guy, right? Will they go after a person like Jalen Ramsey who's a little bit of a diva? And I think the answer is no. Unfortunately, we're not going to go after people like that, let alone spend that much money. The reality is this: the Dolphins have spent a lot of money on Jalen Ramsey, and it's a huge contract. It's a lot like a Joey Bosa situation. Again, Joey Bosa was injured. That was a problem. Jalen Ramsey's not injured, but he's a bit of a diva. So the argument, and they clearly have a fractured relationship with the head coach and maybe even the defensive coordinator at this point as well too. So it's a lose-lose situation. And it's really hard to move big contracts like this because of the dollars amount. And again, the Dolphins don't want to eat that money. If they eat that money, it's just out of their pockets. But Jalen Ramsey didn't play great last year, so I don't know how they move him without eating some half a percentage, who knows, of that money. Just teams are not going to take him. So again, I think it's an interesting conversation. He's all over the news. Not a lot to talk about, so I thought, hey, this is a good little video. What do you guys think? Should we go after Jalen Ramsey? $20 million, a lot of money to spend. My personal opinion is we're probably going to give it to Rashawn Slater. So, guys, as always, leave a comment down below. See you guys in the next one.
Hey, what's up? Cameron Dick here watching Bolt Bros podcast. Let's go.